Good morning. You all did a great job making it here on time at 9 a.m. We'll have more colleagues and guests joining us throughout, but it's a real pleasure to be here with you this morning and welcome. The start of day 2 of the Global Sustainable Tourism Conference is very exciting. What a day 1 yesterday. Raise your hand if you found that day 1 had some good insights for you when you go back to your home destination. Yeah, I did too. It was wonderful. Well, welcome. My name is Andrew Leary. I'm a principal at Coraggio Group, which is a strategy consulting firm that's focused on community-led efforts to create comprehensive strategies that balance stewardship, cultural preservation, and economic development. And I'm really honored to be moderating this morning's conversation about destination roadmaps and sustainability plans with the speakers that we have on stage, but also with each of you, because we want this to be a conversation. We want this to be engaging. Big thank you to the audience. Big thank you also to those who are joining us virtually. This is being live streamed on Facebook, so there are many colleagues from around the globe that are joining us right now as well. Just some housekeeping before we get into our presentation for today. So we'll be using a couple of different technology pieces. One of them is Slido. It's what we used yesterday to engage the panelists in questions that we have. So if you haven't used Slido yet, all you need to do is use a device, and you can go ahead and scan that QR code. And what I'll ask is when you put your questions in, if you wouldn't mind also putting your name at the end of the question, because that's helpful. GSTC is collecting all of these questions and creating a library, and it's really helpful to know who's asking what questions, if you feel comfortable with that. There'll also be an opportunity to thumbs up or upvote a question that you already see on Slido, and that will help to kind of move it up in the sequence that our panelists will have an opportunity to engage with. Another piece of technology that we're going to be using today is Snapsight, which is this great AI recording device, which was new to me when I came to the conference. And if you haven't looked at Snapsight yet, I definitely encourage you to. At the end of this presentation, like every presentation that uses it, will be an AI synopsis and an overview of what's collected here today and the conversations that we have. And I know for me, I take a lot of written down notes, but this is extremely helpful for when I go back to the United States where I'm from to think about and reflect on all the great content that we had. So this is Snapsight for you here. So let me introduce our panelists first. Chris Cocker is a Tongan national and the CEO of the South Pacific Tourism Organization, bringing more than 20 years of experience and expertise in Pacific trade, investment, global tourism marketing, and promotion. Karla Eggelton is the CEO of the Cook Islands Tourism Marketing Corporation, whose clear focus is ensuring that tourism brings lasting value to the people of the Cook Islands. Morgan Mingle is the Director of Sustainable Tourism at the Park City Chamber of Commerce and Visitors Bureau in the United States, where she leads the destination's management efforts, including the Sustainable Tourism Grant Program and the implementation of the destination's 10-year strategic framework. And last but certainly not least is Kiri Goulter, Managing Director of KG Consulting, with decades of experience in sustainable tourism, destination management, and stewardship, including transformational initiatives in Aotearoa, New Zealand, including shaping the country's destination management agenda. Let's give it a big round of applause for our panelists for today. Our panelists are only one part of the conversation. You all are the other part of the conversation. So I'd like to engage you all a little bit this morning. Please raise your hand if your organization or destination is actively working within a destination strategy or roadmap. Okay, please keep your hands up if you just put your hands up. Please now raise your hand if you are beginning the stages of developing a destination roadmap or sustainability plan. And then last question, please raise your hand if you are on a learning journey to understand more about what roadmaps and sustainability plans can do for your destination. Just like the community that we have here, it's really crucial that community is the foundation for all of these plans and strategies that we have. Every day, there are strategies that are created for destinations and organizations to guide their efforts 1 year at a time, 3 years at a time, 5 years at a time. I had a destination reach out to me last year who said they wanted a 20-year plan. And I said, tell me more about why you want such a long-term plan. Because the tourism industry is very dynamic. Our communities are very dynamic. But community is really a part of what it takes to form everything and to bring it together in an authentic way. And so to kick off the conversation, Chris, just like the community that we have gathered here, it takes a true community to develop meaningful tools for real change. Would you share with us the journey of the Pacific Tourism Policy Framework?
Thank you, Andrew. And it feels like the North Pole in here, but we're in the South Pacific. Warm Pacific greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our part of the world, the Pacific Islands. I always say it's the best part of the whole globe. And I'd like to thank the organizers, the GSTC, as well as Tourism Fiji, because you've brought the event to the Pacific Islands and we've benefited from that too. And also to our audience for taking time. But firstly, I just want to start, what is the Pacific Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework? It's a journey that we've endeavored with all our 20 member countries, and it is a regional policy framework that advances sustainable tourism in our region. It also helps identify priorities for action in national as well as regional, and as well as provides or mobilizes regional and international cooperation. It also helps monitor our progress on our sustainable tourism journey. So why is the PSTPF matters to us in the Pacific? It's our shared vision and commitment of all our 20 member countries. It provides clarity of our strategic direction moving forward of all our members. And it also promotes partnerships and engagement for all our sectors, as well as the tourism sector itself. And it also provides a holistic approach in maximizing opportunities that come across us and also mitigates these challenges. And finally, it is a framework that grounds specific values and principles for tourism development. So it's actually strategically aligned to the 2050 Blue Pacific Strategy, and that is the whole umbrella strategy for the whole Pacific Islands. And we're part of the CROP, or the Council of Regional Organizations of Pacific. The Pacific Sustainable Tourism Policy Framework aligns as well to the SPTO strategic plan for the next 5 years. And it is one of the drivers that help implement our strategic plan. Within the PSTPF is tools such as a communication strategy and action plan, as well as examples, specific cultural guidelines, as well as other guidelines that we have in there. So there are 4 goals. Goal 1 is prosperous economies, and there's a lot of work that's been done there. I'll just pinpoint and highlight key things that we have done. In high-level commitment, 19 of our SPTO member countries have signed a statement for commitment. This is from our Ministers of Tourism. If we look at policies and plans, we have the Pacific Sustainable Tourism Standards, which is recognized by GSTC. And under research and statistics, we've developed a Sustainable Tourism Indicators framework to help measure tourism. But also we're about to sign with the University of the South Pacific to set up a Pacific Center of Excellence for Tourism Research. And in terms of capacity building, we've developed the SME Recovery Toolkit for our member countries' SMEs and conducted online training. If we look at the Leadership Summit, we have a Pacific Sustainable Tourism Leadership Summit that happens every 2 years. And the next one is in Vava'u, in the Kingdom of Tonga in October, on the 21st of October. And if you don't know anything about Vava'u, it's the jewel of Tonga, and it's where world watching is and where ecotourism happens in this case. And so you're welcome to attend, and registrations will be going out soon. If we look at Goal 2, which is basically looking at thriving and inclusive communities. A lot has been done as well, but we also have a Pacific Youth Forum on sustainable tourism, which will be happening during the Pacific Sustainable Tourism Leadership Summit in Vava'u. We also have conducted a general audit for national tourism organizations, but also we've embarked on a journey for community-based tourism, peer-to-peer exchange. And the first one is between Fiji and Samoa. And it's good to see Jenny and also the Samoan contingents who are part of that peer-to-peer exchange. If we look at visible and valued cultures, we've launched the Pacific Cultural Tourism Guidelines. We've also currently developing our Pacific Cultural Tourism training models, and that will be launched sometime soon. Last one is Goal for Healthy Islands and Oceans, and a lot has been done in that. We've launched the Responsible Marine Wildlife Viewing Guidelines, as well as we've done a lot of work with SPRIP on plastics, on phasing out single-use plastics in the Pacific. And we've done a standard certification framework as well as toolkit. And with Regional Tourism New Zealand and New Zealand AMFET, we've conducted climate champion trainings for our member countries. It's not a rosy trip in terms of our journey with the PSTPF. There's been challenges. And the first one is tourism is usually not a priority sector when it comes to national investment across our member countries. Funding and human resources within SPTO, as well as our member countries in the implementation of the PSTPF is a challenge, and monitoring progress, particularly hindered by data gaps. And I think that's a global issue in terms of data gaps in case. And our challenge in the Pacific is different ministries or departments handle the data in this case. There are competing donor priorities, usually not favoring tourism in this area, and there's varying capacity and capability building within our 20 member countries in the Pacific. Alignment of national and regional priorities is usually also a challenge. However, there are successes that we'd like to highlight. We've seen the high level commitment and political will of our member countries, particularly post-COVID. There's global recognition of our Pacific's journey in advancing sustainable tourism. Particularly in 2023, we won the award of the Commonwealth Secretaries General on the PSTPF, particularly in promoting partnerships on sustainable development. PSTPF has become an overarching framework for national development, and a good example is that Fiji has used it as their overarching framework to develop their own national sustainable policy and framework. And finally, SPTO has been positioned as a regional leader in sustainable tourism in this case. There are lessons learned. Sustainable and responsible tourism will require collaboration, which is very important, and that's through government, NGOs, private sector, as well as all key partners. At the end of the day, our journey, communities need to be the center, and I think I've heard that reiterated throughout the sessions. And governance strengthening is important in the sector itself, in tourism, as well as supporting entities, and capacity development for the region is still an ongoing requirement on the importance of sustainable tourism and how to actually implement it. And finally, tourism must be integrated across all government agencies. So I think a key takeaway and the cornerstone of our Pacific sustainable tourism journey is basically Pacific communities and Pacific values, which is important. But I want to conclude with a quote: "We are the crossroads. We need a paradigm shift. We need to go back to Pacific values because sustainability is at the heart of our belief system." This is the link for our PSTPF and also context for that. And thank you very much. I hope you're still awake.
Thank you, Chris, for sharing that. And thank you for also being vulnerable to share the challenges and the successes. Because with any journey that we're on, it's not just about what's good. It's not just the positive return. We need to be aware of challenges because they're always going to be there. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But the way you describe community, and especially the values that you just remarked on, I think that's really important. It sets a good tone for a regional approach with 20 member countries. That's pretty remarkable. There are other remarkable things happening across the globe as well, and in Park City, Utah, that's one of those locations in the United States. It's not only a leader in championing sustainability, but also working across a very dynamic community with unique challenges. And in fact, Coraggio Group and Matthew Landcamer had the opportunity to build the sustainable tourism plan that Park City uses today. So Morgan, I'm wondering if you could share with us the journey that you've been on and how do you reflect on the last 3 years of the plan?
Thanks so much. And this is the most interesting clicker I've ever seen. So hi, it's good to see all of you guys this morning. And happy to share the journey we've been on in Park City. So for any folks that aren't familiar with our destination, we're located in the middle of the Rocky Mountains in the US, in Utah, quite close to Salt Lake City. So we're a pretty accessible ski destination in terms of getting in and out to an international airport. And really what we're known for is having a lot of very rooted local character, local history. So we were an early mining silver town, traditional home to Ute and Shoshone people. And the town really retains a lot of that charm. So we are really happy to have been a former host at the Olympics and are excited to welcome back the Olympics in 2034 as the winter venue for those games. So as you would expect, between our easy access from an airport and a destination that is just really vibrant, we have a lot of tourism pressures that come with having such an attractive destination. And so some of what I want to talk about with the time that I have with you guys is the journey that we've taken to both create our sustainable tourism plan. And you'll notice that the plan is a couple years into implementation. So I'm going to use some of this time to highlight some of the initiatives that we've done since that plan has been implemented, which I think will be really good food for conversation following our presentations as panelists. So you'll see that the first stage of creating our sustainable tourism plan was really doing that GSTC assessment. I think that it was such a foundational piece of creating our plan because it provided some objective information about how we're doing as a destination to all the stakeholders that were involved in creating that plan. So we had a stewardship council that was 22 different stakeholders that came in with their own varying viewpoints, their own varying professional roles as leaders in the community to see that objective GSTC assessment, along with some really extensive resident survey work to inform the creation of our sustainable tourism plan. You'll see that was adopted in 22. And I think a phase of adopting our sustainable tourism plan as a plan for the community that worked really well was presenting that plan to our government leaders. So we presented to the government of Park City, we presented to the councils at Summit County to show those elected leaders what was produced by this group of stakeholders and get their buy-in, because it's not a plan that we can execute just as a DMO. It's a plan that the community has to come together to help execute. And so since that plan was adopted, there are a couple of key things that I wanted to put on this timeline that I think really help reinforce the idea of keeping this plan vibrant and alive in the community, because it is really easy to make a plan and then put it on a shelf and no one really thinks about it. And I think some of those key things that I wanted to just bring some conversation around was, one, launching our sustainable tourism grant. This has been a really wonderful yearly reminder in our community that there's money available for partners to execute on programs, projects, initiatives that help reinforce the goals of our sustainable tourism plan. It's a relatively modest amount of money considering the destination that we're in, but it is, again, that just cyclical yearly reminder, and it's putting money in the hands of people that are best positioned to execute on some of these initiatives. We were also awarded a destination certification, which is a really great honor and was a lot of work that went into it, as we all know here in this room. And then lastly, I wanted to highlight, we did a big rebrand as an organization and created essentially a new word called Mountain Kind. And I think this is a really key change that our organization made, because it created a really easy platform for us to talk about sustainability, to talk about responsible visitation, and connect with our community in a way that felt really authentic. So we're really proud of this plan and the platform of Mountainkind. It's about a year old now, and it's been really fun to riff on this as a way to really advance what we're doing in sustainable tourism. In case you wanted to check out the plan as a whole, here's a QR code. I'll linger for just a couple of seconds. If anyone wants to take a look, I see phones up. This will also be available after the fact, so I'm going to keep us moving. And then just as a quick overview of the objectives that were identified as part of this plan, you'll see that it reflects all of what is in a GSTC assessment, right? So we're considering community, we're considering environmental responsibility and economic viability of Park City as a destination. And then I just wanted to highlight some of the things that we've done in the last couple of years that we're pretty proud of. So like I mentioned, we have that new Mountainkind brand. And I wanted to show some examples of how we're executing on that brand. And I think something that's really lovely about this is we're doing all of our same traditional marketing channels that we do to market and attract visitors to the destination, but helps us sprinkle in a little bit of that love this place like we love it energy. Again, in a way that feels really nice and authentic and not preachy. It's just inviting people in to this Mountainkind movement. We've also been doing a lot of work to just stretch ourselves and really engage with our local community. I think as a traditional DMO that only focused on marketing a few years ago, this is a new area for us, and we're trying to figure out how to engage with our resident and workforce populations in a way that doesn't feel like pandering. So some work that we've been doing is, like I mentioned, the pie chart of our sustainable tourism grant, but we've also been doing more community events to help meet residents and locals where they are and try and engage with them. So the photo with the coffee cups is something called Mountainkind Mornings that we did for the first time last year. And we just put it out there with local radio spots and our local newspaper that if you go to any of the coffee shops in Park City on this one day in the morning, you get a free cup of coffee. And we had free mugs until they ran out. And it was just fantastic to talk to residents and workforce that just don't really show up to our other events because everyone loves free coffee. And I think it's initiatives like this that have helped us just extend our reach more and more, and we're just trying to figure out how we connect with more and more people in our community. Yes. We've also been trying to increase just the capacity of some of the industry leaders in our destination to do more sustainable work. So we have our local green business program that provides a ton of one-on-one hand-holding and resources for local businesses that might want to become either more green or more equitable. We've also really been pioneering some workforce support that is really needed in a destination like ours that can struggle with things like affordable housing. So something like our WeRIP program is providing incentives for local homeowners to offer up a room or an extra apartment that they might have for a long-term or a seasonal worker rather than just doing a short-term rental. We're also working on a dashboard right now that is a way to track all of the metrics that are included in our sustainable tourism plan so we can, in a really transparent way, show how we're doing in a lot of these areas. So I'm excited to launch that in a couple weeks. And that's really kind of the overview of little tidbits of what I want to share. But I'm really excited to continue the conversation, especially with the other panelists here. And yeah, look forward to chatting more with all of you.
Thank you, Morgan, for sharing out the journey with Park City. Aside from Coraggio's work, I am a former resident of Park City myself, and I lived there before this plan was ever even conceived. And it is very transformational in what's happened. I used to be a part of that workforce. I'll also just say that Park City and many other destinations were a part of a recent research study called Destination Forward, which is really the largest study of its kind that took place in the United States to assess the value and impact of destination stewardship plans and strategies. So it looked at over 35 examples of destination stewardship plans from Ketchikan, Alaska to the Outer Banks of North Carolina in the United States. And the study looked at visions and goals and recommended actions and really assesses the strength and weaknesses of these plans. So Destination 4, it's available for anybody to be able to view. My colleague Chris Adams, who's here with us today, played a key role in that. So if you're curious more about that study and how it might be able to be useful for your destination or Morgan's perspectives in it, please let her know. I'm going to transition over to Karla. And Karla, I think one thing that stood out for me yesterday when Randy was sharing so much about terminology is that phrases like sustainable tourism and responsible tourism are not one size fits all. They're a journey. And these phrases really act as mirrors for the community's own values. What does the mindset shift look like for what responsible tourism means to the Cook Islands Tourism Marketing Corporation and also the prosperity of the Cook Islands people?
Thank you, Andrew. Kia ora, everybody. Good morning. Bula, are we alive? Have we had coffee? Yeah, great. Kia ora. I'm just going to say that, Morgan, I really like the coffee in the morning idea, but for the Cook Islands, I think I'll swap it out with coconut water, and then we'll be ready to go. Community, Cook Islands, our approach to destination stewardship and implementation. Today I want to share to you just how the Cook Islands has transformed this approach, embedding governance, collaboration and sustainability through the work of the corporation, the stewardship plan, highlighting some key tools that we have used to contextualise the role that we are playing or the journey that Cook Islands is taking, but really speaking to our community values and traditional principles and bringing them to life through a community-led lens. So for context, our economy depends on tourism. It contributes more than 75% of our GDP. It is the only game in town for the foreseeable future for the Cook Islands. COVID-19 exposed just how vulnerable that resilience made us. We face growing pressures, lagoon health, waste management, infrastructure and housing strains, as well as cultural risk of loss of authenticity. It became clear that we had to move from business as usual tourism model, and we needed to root ourselves in sustainability and resilience. And we had to align ourselves with our National Sustainable Development Agenda, the regional agenda and endeavours that SPTO were putting out, and of course the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. For a country of 16,000 people, 75% of our GDP, a 10-to-1 visitor-to-resident ratio, and a high density with a low land resource became really critical that we could align ourselves with the bigger endeavours. It also helped us to accelerate the work that we wanted to do. So when we talk about what the community is, every man, woman and child is impacted and involved in this thing that we call tourism. And so while we were working very hard to ensure that the conversation was community-led, we learned very early on that in order to make anything happen, we needed to enable this. And so we looked at the role of government and what we needed to do to activate those pieces, because it's all fine and dandy having the people talk about what they want to do, but if we don't have those mechanisms in place to activate them, then what's the point? And so we very quickly took the opportunity to take the economic reliance of tourism and embed it into becoming a force for good across all of national decisions. And so through a cabinet minute, we had our whole of government endorse tourism to be the accelerator and catalyst for any kind of consideration in resource mobilisation. So what that meant was we had our key enablers brought into a room and have an advisory group that oversees this program. Largely because tourism is not a Cook Islands Tourism Corporation job. It is everybody's job and responsibility. So we took extra effort in ensuring that the work of the stewardship plan sat outside of the corporation, but still had a lens into the work that the corporation needed to do. And so there we developed a project management unit that was largely independent and reported up to a government structure that included tourism as a stakeholder, but we were one of 7 stakeholders that we were able to work with. And so the PMU was the operational engine reporting to the DSAG and Cook Islands Tourism, and the objective here was to ensure that we had unified governance for measurable results. And it became very important because when tourism is 75% of your GDP, you're so close to the national agenda, you might as well be the national agenda. And that was the lens in which we followed through on our journey. So what role does Cook Islands Tourism have to play in all of this? Well, we recognised earlier on, like everybody, that as a DMO, we needed to transition and move towards more of a destination stewardship and responsibility role. And so our organisational review is currently underway. There are a lot of stepping stones that we need to do to help us position ourselves for success, and we had to make sure that stewardship and management led the way, whereas in the last 20, 30 years, marketing had led the way, which is very common in many destinations. We needed guiding documents so that we had evidence-based foundations. And so our approach was grounded in evidence. We began with the GSTC destination assessment to understand our sustainability baseline. We conducted a carrying capacity study to understand better the pressures and to set clear limits for growth. We have worked with disaster and emergency management, and we are currently reviewing our tourism policies to align them with our national priorities and with SPTO's regional frameworks. And then soon we will be completing a climate risk assessment to ensure that we understand the climate lens that we're all facing going forward. So these guiding documents have provided the foundation for action, and so they're not just ideas, and there will be more to help. There will be more on its way that will help us in shaping the work as we progress. We are fairly new to this this project. We joined GSTC 9 months ago, and the assessment happened very soon after, and so we are less than a year in this journey. And so listening to Morgan and what they've been able to achieve in 3 years is really inspiring, but we do know that we need to do it in our own way and in our own approach. Our stewardship plan is built around the 4 interconnected pillars, and you can see very quickly that they are aligned to the regional and to the global standards. You will also note that we're not taking responsibility for these areas because tourism shouldn't be responsible for everything. We should lead and support. And so we've identified other government agencies as specialists to these pillars to ensure that we can wrap our support and success around each of the challenges and opportunities that we highlight. And so the advisory group and the project management unit make sure that every initiative considers all the pillars together. So the role of the advisory group and the PMU is really, really important. Now, remembering also that our stakeholders and our pillar experts and our community still remain the conversation piece and the driver of the content of the work that is being delivered. So we have been able to identify some key areas already. I don't have to go through these with you, but we are stepping through this and identifying some realistic challenges that we can solve together. So how does governance deliver integration? So in this sense, governance delivers integration. This is how it all connects. The advisory group sets the strategy. The PMU coordinates, monitors and delivers the programs. Cook Islands Tourism, we lead and support. Stakeholders are engaged constantly throughout the process, not once, not twice, but over and over as we continue on the journey. And we use Wayfinder for a framework for tracking internally the work that we're doing. And we're working on our dashboard of national metrics because we should be reporting as a single unity. And that's the work that we're doing at the moment. This is collaboration in action. It is the heart of our model. Island councils adapt solutions for their own island settings and they plan locally. The private sector works with us through industry task forces, and the communities are directly involved in the consultations and the benefit sharing. And SPTO has been an accelerator in all of this, providing regional frameworks, technical expertise, and connecting us with other Pacific destinations so we can learn together and scale together. So when we measure success, we have a really, we're using this approach to help us internally and externally, and this has helped us in being able to recognise a call to action. To summarise, the Cook Islands tourism approach is a blueprint for small islands with big ambitions. Tourism is a stewardship responsibility, and by aligning all the key sectors and areas, we've created a model that is scalable across the Pacific. We're proving that sustainable tourism isn't just possible, it's practical, measurable, and collaborative. And we invite partners here today, and I saw some hands in the room, to join us in making the Pacific Islands standard a reality. Me taki mata, thank you.
Kanaka, Karla, that was amazing, and considering the duration of the journey that Cook Islands has been on, it's incredible what you've been able to do so far. And what I reflected on really all along this panel, but particularly what Karla mentioned, is that there are two words that begin with M in the tourism world. One of them is marketing, and one of them is management. Marketing forever has been the core of what destination organizations have been expected to do or funded to do. But now we're being asked to manage. And so far we've heard a really great journey and dialogue about what management can look like. And I think that is something to really lean into more. And Kiri, I'm curious, with your experience with destination management in Aotearoa, what have you reflected on, and where do you see things now and into the future?
Would you like me to answer that now, or just kick into my presentation, Andrew?
You can go right into your presentation.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. Good morning, everybody from Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's lovely to be here. Wonderful speakers to go beforehand. You'll see lots of commonalities in what I'm going to talk about this morning. Can I have a raise of hands first? Who's been to New Zealand? Woohoo, that's pretty impressive. Excellent. Put your hand up if you're a DMO here. A few of you. Put your hand up if you have DMOs within your country, within your, So you work with DMOs, right? So they're common structure. So today I'm going to briefly talk about New Zealand's destination stewardship journey, but I am going to focus, to Andrew's point, on the role of the DMO within this. Implementation is critical. And the DMO plays a core role in helping with that implementation, and Karla's touched on that, so I'll expand on it. So as I said, it's lovely to be here. And to start off from a New Zealand context, so tourism is New Zealand's second largest export sector, contributing roughly about 7.5% to GDP. The sector has been long marketing-led, anchored by our iconic 100% pure New Zealand brand, one of the most recognised destination brands in the world. And for many visitors, New Zealand is a once-in-a-lifetime destination. However, with years of continuous growth, the cracks were starting to show. Visitation was heavily concentrated in a few destinations where infrastructure was under strain. Seasonal peaks intensified this pressure, and many regions beyond the Golden Route struggled to grow their market share. Community sentiment was shifting, and there were concerns about tourism's impacts on their social impacts and environmental impacts. Over-tourism had entered the national conversation, and the gap between New Zealand's brand promise and the on-the-ground reality was becoming harder to ignore. Our Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment issued the sector a warning and a challenge. He said that tourism growth under a business as usual model was actively eroding the environmental and cultural values which defined our nation and our visitor appeal. In response, the New Zealand government launched a new tourism strategy in 2019 that focused on sustainability, long-term value, and local benefit. Destination management became a priority, and a set of destination management guidelines were developed to provide a framework for destinations to embark on a more sustainable approach. So, you know, we're a rugby nation. I thought that this would be a nice sort of analogy of how we have mobilised around this. So COVID hit. Our borders were closed for 2 years, and this forced us to pause and to have a reset. The government targeted investment into destination management, mobilising the whole country and at scale. All regions, and there's 30 of them in New Zealand, embarked on developing a destination management plan. RTOs, they are our DMOs, the equivalent, regional tourism organisations, RTOs, were empowered to lead, and the destination management guidelines provided the framework to get everybody started. Regional Tourism New Zealand is the industry body for the RTOs, and I was working with them at the time. Was supported also by the government to support this mahi, this work right across New Zealand. And as I said, I was fortunate to be in a position to lead it. Regional leadership groups were formed to support the DMP planning process. And after extensive consultation took place with communities right across Aotearoa, New Zealand, the plans took time to develop, longer than many expected, and the conversations weren't always easy. The RTOs stayed the course, building relationships, trust, alignment, and local ownership. Engagement with our Indigenous Māori was a critical part of the process. Each plan reflects Māori values, aspirations, and their worldview, helping to shape how destinations are stewarded into the future. Today we have 29 destination management plans, one for every region. There is one region that came together across 2 DMOs and collaborated under one plan, and that's the Queenstown Lakes District, Queenstown and Wanaka, one of our hero destinations in New Zealand. While no 2 plans are the same, they all share 3 things in common: a desire for a better future, a commitment to protecting and enhancing environments and communities, and a belief in partnership and collaboration is the way forward. If you go to RTNZ's website there, you can download all the DMPs, and there's also a series of case studies, so you'll see written case studies and videos from some of our RTOs telling their stories. So destination and management and stewardship requires a mindset shift. It also requires a different skill set. Many stakeholders were questioning the shift, asking why RTOs were moving beyond marketing. It was vital that the RTOs had the skills and confidence to explain the why and to demonstrate the value of this new approach. Regional Tourism New Zealand recognised that shifting from traditional marketing to destination stewardship required building the capability of the RTOs so they could lead effectively and bring their destinations along on the journey. We developed Te Onga Mai, a national capability program for RTOs, which was grounded in Te Ao Māori values. We engaged Miles Partnership to help us on this journey. And we started with an RTO self-assessment against the 16 characteristics of the Destination Management Guidelines. This identified where RTOs and regions were at, provided a baseline benchmark for us to track progress and help shape the program content. Te Onga Mai ran over 3 years, with all RTOs across New Zealand participating and multiple staff across all departments also participating. The program included international, national and local perspectives. There were 19 online learning labs, we were all experts at Zoom, and 5 in-person residentials where RTO staff came together to learn and to share together over 3 days. The content was extensive, over 50 information sessions, many case studies where RTO shared their own work numerous workshops where they were working collectively on solutions to challenges, and field trips where we could see sustainable or regenerative practices in action. And of course, we had plenty of fun in the evenings. As an extension, towards the end of the program, you'll see there, 12 RTOs then engaged in a climate champions program, which was supported by the Travel Foundation and Expedia Group. At the final residential, which was held in Rotorua last year, we had the pleasure of SPTO and 9 Pacific nations joining us. That was truly something special. As part of my role, I also provided support and coaching to the CEs and CEs and GMs to support their leadership. So we tracked RTO progress and evaluated impact throughout to continually improve. Tiong'a Mai was critical in helping RTOs from planning to implementation. It supported a fundamental shift in capabilities beyond marketing. It improved their knowledge, increased their confidence, and gave them the tools to engage in complex and challenging issues and opportunities facing their destinations. The program elevated RTOs as respected professionals and leaders. Over the course of the 3 years, the depth and the maturity of thinking evolved dramatically. We recall back in 2021, many RTOs were like what we call possums in the headlights, overwhelmed and uncertain about how to move forward. By 2024, we saw a confident, capable network embracing stewardship, thinking critically, leading with courage and conviction. New Zealand is a small, well-connected country, and one of the greatest strengths of Tiong'a Mai was the relationships that it fostered, learning together, sharing challenges, mutually supporting each other right across the country were defining features of the program. It was recognised as a great success and recognised for a Tourism Award in 2022 for industry collaboration. So what are my takeaways from all of this? What have we learned as a country? First of all, it starts with relationships. At the heart of stewardship is people. We're in this together, and it's only through trust, partnerships and collaboration that will make real progress. We've heard about the importance of a shared vision and shared responsibility, and also the importance of governance structures. So governance and leadership structures are critical to all of this so that everybody owns and has collective responsibility of implementation of the plan. It is not solely the role of the RTO to implement the plan at all. They're the leader, the facilitator, the connector and the enabler. They're the champion of the team. Stewardship must transcend political cycles. This work takes time, and government changes can disrupt momentum. To endure, stewardship needs to be embedded across strategies, policies and sectors and beyond tourism. And ideally, it needs to be underpinned by legislation that provides longevity, consistency and accountability. Tourism must deliver value to people in place. It's no longer tourism for tourism's sake. Stewardship plans should show how tourism contributes to well-being of communities and society as a whole. There needs to be a fit-for-purpose system and structures. Implementations matter. Implementation matters. Plans are easy. Implementation is hard. The destination systems and structures must enable stewardship, not stand in its way. If we're serious about this shift, it must be structured properly, funded properly, and staffed properly. This may mean reshaping the role of DMOs, reducing the emphasis on marketing, and increasing the focus on development, facilitation, and place-based leadership. DMOs are critical to the success. They are the neutral conveners in the destination. They hold the relationships. They see the bigger picture, and they're working for the greater good of the sector. We must continue to invest in their capability and leadership, and also build stewardship skills beyond just tourism, right across the ecosystem of the destination. Too many plans also stall because the ambition isn't matched by the investment or the resources that are available. So if you're beginning your journey there, be very mindful of the context of your destination, what you have available to you. Take small steps, work with the willing. You won't solve everything at once and you don't need to. So lastly, lead with courage, act with care and stay the course. The shift in destination stewardship requires that bold leadership. deep relationships and sustained commitment, but the rewards are great. He ika waka noa. So in Māori, we're all in this together on this journey, and no one must be left behind. Kia ora koutou, ngā mihi nui.
Vanaka, Kiri, that was amazing. And thank you, everybody on stage who's been sharing. It's clear that these roadmaps and strategies can be such a helpful tool, but a tool is only as good as the resource that can utilize it, that can support it, that has been equipped to learn how this tool evolves, because these are not set in stone, even though they're on print, they're on screen. These are living things that evolve. And I think it's pretty clear that in order for sustainable practices to become more a part of what we're doing, things need to be fluid and need to be able to evolve over time. We're going to transition into more of the conversation now. Thank you for those who have been populating some questions into Slido already. If you would like to populate a question or upvote any of the questions that are in there, you can go ahead and scan the QR code. Morgan, I'm going to ask you the first question, and for all the panelists, there are a few handheld microphones that are around, and you can click them on. But Morgan, there's a question: who can ask for the grants that you all are issuing, and what kind of projects were you funding?
Yeah, for our sustainable tourism grants, we're relatively open about who can apply for these grants. So anyone in the community is able to apply for the grant with the exception of any government entities. We do allow for collaboration between government organizations and nonprofits, local businesses, to be able to use these grant funds. So we're relatively open and relatively flexible on the types of organizations. What we really care more about is the kinds of projects that they're asking for this funding. Folks can request up to $30,000 for these projects. And as part of the application, we're asking them how the projects are going to help the goals of the Sustainable Tourism Plan, but even more broadly, how the projects are going to help support the environment, local culture, underserved populations, to really get an idea of how this is really going to help impact us as an entire community and not just some of the objectives of our plan. So all this being said, some kinds of projects that we funded have included the creation of a new trails conditions website. So we're a destination that has a variety of different trail managers that would update their own trail conditions websites independently of one another. And grant funding helped create one central website for them all to update, which has really helped with our visitor education and has made it a lot easier for residents to understand where they should be recreating during different times of the year. We were also really happy to support a study that was done on the economic impacts of affordable housing in our community by our local housing nonprofit. And so they were able to use those grant funds to hire consultants to do that study that's helping us really be thoughtful about how we're thinking about housing and development in the Park City area. And I think one more example, which is a really straightforward one, is just helping pay for leasing of some private land to be available for public access for outdoor recreation and manage that land in a way that's really holistic and appropriate. So there really are a lot of kind of diverse kinds of projects that are funded. And again, like I mentioned, I think it's just a really helpful tool to remind people of those objectives every year and really just help use some of our fundings to support those projects that are going to help reinforce our main objectives.
Great, thanks for those insights. Grant funding can be so powerful in our communities, and just as important is the journey for applying for those grants and making sure that it's accessible to everybody in the community. Grant applications are very complicated sometimes, but they don't have to be.
Yeah, that's actually something I wanted to mention too, is our application is very short and very simple. So you don't have to have a grant writer to apply, and it really does make it that much more accessible for really any kind of organization or leader to apply.
Great, thank you for that. Chris, I'd like to ask you, there's a question, sometimes there's a juxtaposition between a sense of a high level commitment, but then something maybe not being a national priority. And I wonder, how do you, with the work that you're engaged with, how do you balance that? And what have you seen? How does that commitment work if some people believe it's not a national priority?
Thank you, Andrew. And probably I'll just try and clarify, what we said high-level commitment, because when we say high-level commitment, that is commitment on paper, but also in action, and in terms of committing resources in this case. The Pacific has gone through a journey, and as you probably see in the countries that have been successful in tourism are the ones who their governments have provided high-level commitment. Now, I'll probably count 6 out of that, out of our 20 in this case. But I feel that in the past 20, 30 years, we've seen a shift of more understanding and recognition. But I feel that there needs to be a more higher level of recognition of tourism as an important sector compared to other sectors in this case. We are still working in silos in the Pacific, the different sectors, and I could give a good example with aviation and tourism. We're so interdependent, but we're working in silos in this case. But I feel that in terms of working with the countries, we go back to the countries to work with them in prioritizing tourism, in this case, in their commitment. The high-level commitment that I mentioned earlier was in 2021 during COVID. So all the countries decided, because tourism wasn't happening, we would reset ourselves and be more committed to sustainable tourism. And we've seen the successes in different countries in developing their own respective policies. Probably I'll also answer the second question that came up there, how we measure sustainable tourism indicators. We've got 3 pillars that we use, which is the economic, the environment, and social cultural. The challenge we have, we've got economic data, but the other 2, social cultural and environment. And the challenge is that different ministries and departments handle and also collect this data. So that is a challenge to bring them together. And of course, with the recognition that with measuring tourism, it's not looking only at the economic benefits in this case, but the impacts on the social culture as well as environmental. Thank you.
I thank you for that response, and I think what we learned coming out of the pandemic is that there can be such a rallying community call to say these things are important to us, but let's think of how our values show up and what this means for the future. And now that we are a few years removed from the pandemic, but now we are into other global intersections and things that are happening, it's more and more important that those values continue to move forward. But you mentioned something else around indicators, which I think is really important. Plans are created at all shapes and sizes. Not all plans have reliable indicators to say, here's how we know what we are doing is having an effect. And so I'll start with Karla, but it's really for any of our panelists up here. Karla, what are the ways that you are approaching indicators and the measurement of progress, and are you using any platforms or tools to help you with that?
Really a timely question, because it's something that we're discussing in real time at the moment. We're on the hunt. Because tourism sits close to the National Sustainable Development Agenda, our national program, we're actually looking for a national solution. And we know that tourism can be the catalyst, because a lot of the indicators that come out of the frameworks, the sustainable frameworks, are our indicators at a national level. And so we've been on the hunt, looking for something, and we've seen a couple of destinations that have got some dashboards and metrics for success that could work. The challenge for us is the collection of the data. So we need to kind of take a step backwards to say, okay, what data do we need? Do we have it? Who should be owning it? And how do we get that done? And so that's the piece that we're looking at before we can even record it, I suppose. So as a small island destination, that's one of the key realities in the work, and then having to pay for it. So there are some best practice elements out there. If there are any answers, we're still on the journey, and you've got some recommendations, audience, I'm all ears and looking for those solutions.
Wonderful. Kiri.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think one of the things too with the destination stewardship plans is that they apply at all levels. So you may have a national plan, a regional plan, but you also often get localised plans. In New Zealand, we've got a number of our destinations who are now doing more localised stewardship plans because they're high volume visitor destinations within a larger context. And so it's really important too, in terms of measuring success, is for each of those plans to define what success looks like themselves. So there's a whole raft of possible indicators, but what's most important for that particular community and that particular place as such within the national context, right? And so, you might have to look for layers of kind of evidence to track progress. That becomes complex and somewhat challenging, and some of it is just qualitative stuff that you may want to do and having discussions with your communities and your stakeholders, right? So I think indicators of success apply at a whole range of different levels, and yeah, that's important too.
I think one thing I've observed coming from the United States is that destination organizations, whether they're marketing or management, are they can be really great at communicating outwardly with people. Of course, very good at communicating with visitors. As we're hearing here, and many of you all are experiencing, we have the opportunity to communicate with our communities as well. This next group that I'm about to mention is a part of our community, but not someone we typically think about, but it's government officials. And what does it look like for government officials to really be educated in the depth that tourism is more than just going on a holiday? Tourism is a visitor economy. Tourism transforms people's lives. It contributes to the prosperity of culture and the perpetuation of what things can do within communities. I think it's one of those important things that governments need to be able to act, but we can't expect government officials to know everything about tourism, but we can be a beacon to carry that forward. And I'm curious if any of our panelists have encountered any success stories with successfully educating government officials about the power of a visitor economy in your destination.
I see you looking at me. This is a hard one. So we're a community in the state of Utah in the United States, and there's a lot of levels of government that might have different priorities. And I think as a whole, we're still trying to figure out how best to collaborate with people that might have varying interests and priorities as a community. But something that I've really been leaning in on is just finding shared values with those collaborators. And often, I feel like government officials can be really focused on things that are important, but part of a larger context. And so something that we've been doing as an organization is shifting away from polarizing language to try and find those shared values. So, for example, we have a more rural part of our county that is still under our jurisdiction with a lot of ranchers, farmers, very traditional livelihoods. And they're in the same county as this really thriving, energizing visitor economy. But if we want to talk about something like responsible land usage, we don't come at them saying, oh, you need to be more sustainable, you need to be more responsible what you do. It's more about resource management. It's about having thoughtful conversations about access to land for things like recreation, hunting, fishing, all of these things that are shared values amongst our community, whether or not they're at the state level or at the local level. And so I think taking a step back and considering where you have alignment with those government entities on any kind of initiative and connecting with them as people when trying to move that initiative forward is really important, whether or not you have a lot of the same values reflected across government and local levels, or if you have those differing. Just relating to people as people and finding those moments of connection is the way to find agreement in those areas.
Kiri?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the secret to it all is that we need to put on different hats when we're talking across government. We need to firstly talk right across government. Tourism touches so many parts of government. So we need to go in wearing their hat and demonstrate to them how tourism helps to deliver their outcomes. firstly, and I don't think as a sector we've done that very well over the past, and that's probably because we've been predominantly focused on marketing. So they haven't seen the relevance. And then I think the second thing, and what I really like about the work that the Cook Islands is doing, and I've also observed that Hawaii is also doing something similar. I think legislation is really important, and tourism legislation for a lot of countries has possibly been around for a long time, is possibly more narrow in its focus. And I think the opportunity to look at legislation that supports the enablement of tourism is really important, so that the legislation is also evolving to, for that broader stewardship approach, because the legislation will help to activate across government horizontally, and in a country like New Zealand, ideally vertically down into local government too, and into that more local level. So I think that is an area which we probably need to put more focus and energy. It's not an easy area to address at all, and it's timely and costly for governments. But I think to create that longevity and de-risk political changes, it's something that we should focus more on into the future.
And Joe, I think in terms of the Pacific itself, there's a lot of work just within our sector in educating our government officials, and that's the journey, of course, through the PSPF. But I feel that with the current review of our regional organizations at the moment, as well as the 2050 Blue Pacific Strategy, that is a vehicle that we could embark on in educating other sectors and government officials on the importance of sustainable tourism. And I felt that the Economic Division have included, and this is through the Farm Secretariat under their Regional Economic Development Program for the next 10 years or so, and they've included sustainable tourism in there, which is a highlight for us in this case. But I feel that it's a journey that we'll have to go through in the Pacific itself, because as I had alluded earlier, we're still working in silos, not only within sectors, but also in regional organizations themselves. And there needs to be more sharing and also education amongst the different government officials in this case, in making better decisions in moving forward. Thank you.
Andrew, if I can just add to the conversation. One of the success stories for the Cook Islands in this space is just a very simple one. And what we learnt is that when we're having a tourism discussion, we don't always have to be the leader. We can also be the supporter in the work that they're doing. And so if you're going into a new space, and in this instance, the social sector, our internal affairs, historically we've had no relationship because we've been working in silos. But if we can come to the table and, as Kiri said, wear their hat and ask them what they want to achieve and what goals they want to see, and share with them that is a shared vision across both, and that we're here to support and help enable that and amplify the work through the tourism lens, then the gates open. And we've seen some success there, and it just depends on their journey too. How quick are they in being able to, and how resourced are they to be able to do that work when we start looking at the tourism lens? And so for a Cook Islands perspective, we have been really pleased at that support that we've gotten in return, the reciprocal approach, and people have been, or government entities have been open to the idea of collaboration. So breaking down those silos is certainly a success story for us.
That's wonderful. It's a journey in itself to break down any barriers for the communities that we seek to work with. And if we seek to work with communities, we shouldn't ask them to join us and come to this and do this, but instead we should show up. We should show up in the communities that we seek to be a part of, and that includes government officials, which is a different spin on communities, but just as important. There are a few more questions in the Slido. We're running short on time, so I do want to first say Vanaka Nui Nui Vanaka to, and congratulations for everybody on stage who shared their journey around roadmaps and sustainability plans and all of the intersectional ideas that it takes to bring these things to life. And thank you all, and congratulations to you all who are on this journey. As we started off, everybody in this room is on the spectrum of being engaged with this. And so I hope that this discussion and this conversation, which certainly isn't the start of a conversation, it's the continuation of, goes on into the networking break that we have coming up, into lunch, into casual conversation that you have while you're at the rest of the Global Sustainable Tourism Conference here in Fiji. So let's give a big round of applause to our panelists. And thank you all for being here this morning, and we'll see you out at the rest of the conference.